Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Hey, race fans, welcome to Drafting the Circuits on the Hoobazoo Radio Network. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we talk about this, this weekend of no racing while the Olympics are going on. Joining me in the studio, I've got Luis Torres and Richard Youden. Fellas, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
How does it?
How does it? Going very well, guys. So today is my birthday, so I get to talk about whatever I want. Just kidding. Actually, let's talk about Red Bull and Mercedes, because this incident at Silverstone is seemingly the thing that wouldn't go away. And I kind of feel like Red Bull is really setting a dangerous precedent by going to the taking legal action in order to, because they felt like the penalty wasn't harsh enough. And everyone seemingly, except Jacques Villeneuve, has something to say and weigh in, and people, like Gunther Steiner's got crazy stuff to say as well. But Richard, kind of talk us through this appeal process that that Red Bull is doing.
So obviously the stewards at the race gave Hamilton the 10-second penalty, which he observed during his pit stop for the race. He went on to, mount a pretty strong comeback there and take the win with a couple of laps to go by passing Charles Leclerc. Now, the stewards aren't directly employed by the FIA or Formula. I can't remember the exact way that they're configured right now, but
they're sort of like a subcontractor, really. They're an independent third party.
Yes,
I guess you could call them.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good way of describing their role. And the teams can appeal penalties, but only on the basis that they present new evidence. Now, or evidence that wasn't available to the stewards at the time the penalty was given out. So, if there was, say, for example, some radio transmission that wasn't heard or whatever it may be, Hamilton turned around and said, "I'm going to take him out on the first corner," sort of thing. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sort of, speculating here. Obviously, I'm sure there wasn't.
Red Bull is adamant that they have some sort of new evidence.
Yeah, no,
they're not really letting on what it is, because I think that crash has been looked at from every replay angle possible.
I mean, I think what they're trying to peddle is the potential injuries that Verstappen could have suffered based on the medical feedback from the medical testing. And based that, because that information wasn't available because the medical examinations hadn't been complete because Max was still at hospital. So I think what they're trying to say is, their argument is, well, this is a really severe accident. So is a 10-second penalty appropriate for severe, a potentially life, an accident that could have caused an injury. So, maybe that's their argument. And if it is, I think that's that's not going to hold water. To be in all fairness.
That's kind of hard to police when you want to decide on where do you draw the line? What is the severity of the crash? I mean, no doubt it was a hell of a hit he took, right?
Oh, yeah.
51 Gs. Yeah, and that was a very, very dangerous wreck. Yeah. Yes. The cars are, however, tremendously safe, and Max was largely unscathed. But where do you decide how hard of a hit to take the next level of penalty. It's a very slippery slope.
Yeah. Now, they could go down the road of, if we look back to Grosjean back in, was it 2012-ish? When he just made a right dog's dinner of the start at Spa and just barrel rolled into half a dozen people. He was actually suspended for a race. Now that may have been, I don't have the penalty point scheme at the time, but they, he was suspended for a race because what the stewards and the FIA deemed his actions were dangerous. And obviously that hasn't come out yet in terms of, nobody's deemed what Hamilton did was dangerous. And I don't think for a minute that what Hamilton did, I don't think he did it deliberately. I don't think he deliberately took Max out. I just think that under the circumstances, under the pressure and under the heat of the moment, he made a mistake. And anybody that turns around and says they don't make mistakes, I'm sorry, it's just a genuine mistake. I don't think there's any malice in it. I don't think he tried to hurt Max. I don't think he even tried to take him out. He just made a mistake. And unfortunately, the consequences were a pretty big impact. Thankfully, not too serious impact for Max. So I really struggle what Red Bull are going to bring to the table here. But we'll find out tomorrow. I guess and see where we go. But yeah,
we always tend to find out the day after we record something.
We record exactly. Yeah,
this is true.
So, thanks, guys. Yeah, maybe I'll have a chat with them and see if they can bring it. Change that.
Yeah,
but it's I really don't know what they're going to do. I think it's just, as I said, I think if they were being, the right thing to do would, to put it bluntly, is just shut up and get on with it. And I'm not saying that in an aggressive way or whatever it may be. I think they just need to just do it. Just let it go. Get on with it, concentrate on Hungary, and go there and do your talking on the track. Don't be, anything else than that. Just go and do what they need to do to, regain that or increase their margin in the championship back up.
Yeah, just kind of back it up, just deliver. Because that to me, if they dwell on it too much, you're going to end up like with Renault a year ago. They were all up in arms about Racing Point. They got what they wanted, but guess what? Consequently, over time, it did them no good because they still were not best as the rest of the season. And different story, but we're talking about team morale here.
Yeah, Red Bull has done a tremendous amount of posturing over the last week or two, trying to play themselves off as innocent victims here. But at the end of the day, right? Max is a pretty aggressive guy too. There's no saying there's no saying there's not a similar incident somewhere down the road. Where there is an accident where Max is at fault, and then somebody employs this same strategy against Red Bull to have a penalty, be made more severe. So, this is the kind of thing that when you set this precedent, that if you disagree with the stewards or disagree with the severity of the penalty, that this may come back to bite you or somebody else or anybody, really.
Oh, of course, and they're certainly they certainly put, as you say, they've got to be very, very careful here. They could put themselves in a situation where, we've all been very critical of some of the stewards' decisions recently, especially going back to Austria, where Love Tap was given a 5-second penalty. That's not appropriate, and I think the drivers have turned around and said, look, we need to back off this. So the drivers even said first lap contact needs to be taken into consideration, that it is first lap. But that was a unique set of circumstances. So I think they've got to be very, very careful and not try and, what's the phrase? Not try and diminish racing and not try and make it out as if they that it's a non-contact sport, because it is a contact. You will get contact. You do get contact. You can't help it. But they need to make the drivers aware of their responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to a certain extent too, that if you take the case of, say, some American stick and ball sports, right? If there's a penalty on the field that the teams disagree with, right? And they do the throw the red flag, look at the replay, challenge it.
Yeah.
Generally, the team stances, once that second decision is done and final, they just move on. It's the fans. Yeah. It's the fans' job to bitch about it for weeks.
Of course it is.
But by the team owners of Red Bull taking this upon themselves to drag this thing out, I just don't think it's very healthy for the sport, and it doesn't put the sport in a good light on the international stage.
No, it doesn't.
Just my thoughts. So, but anyway,
yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's like, just get on with it, boys. I tell you, exactly. guys like Kyle Busch will be laughing themselves to death reading these stories about coming out of Formula One right now. Like, so and so touched so and so. Oh, that's a shame.
That's a shame. Yeah. Rubbing is racing, boys.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, obviously, open wheel racing is a little bit different, of course. But what Hamilton did was, was potentially dangerous, and they've got to, they've got to be smart about it. But I don't think we'll get anywhere. I think it's just going to leave a sour taste in the mouth, and they need to stop. Mercedes and Red Bull need to stop acting like little kids here and get on with it. Yeah, exactly. If we're gonna talk about parking a guy, right? Rather than applying a penalty, this is if you look at Lewis's overall record, he's pretty clean. He's a pretty clean driver. You know what I mean? Exactly.
So it's not as if he's week in, week out taking guys out. He's not Jody Scheckter. You know what I mean? He's not Andrea de Chasseris, where those are guys that maybe should have been parked a time or two during their career. But in the big picture, Lewis has got a pretty clean record out there.
But it only takes one.
It only takes one. Only takes one.
So you do have to be careful. And the corner that was involved, was a dangerous position to do it in. It is a very high speed corner, and the potential ramifications of that move were high, from a safety standpoint. So it'll be interesting to see if they do something, but I doubt they will. I really do.
All right. So speaking of something that we doubt they will, or people have doubted, or maybe not doubt, is the the continuing saga of young George Russell, and will he move up to Mercedes next year? Now we're getting some really strong word that may indeed be in the cards for this upcoming season. So Richard, what are the what are the strong stories you're hearing?
Well, there's been a couple of sound bites that have come out from guys like Toto Wolff, and Toto said, I've got a responsibility to, Valtteri's future if he's not with us next year. I want to make sure that he's in a good car and a good drive. And because Toto is Valtteri's manager, so if Valtteri's talking to other teams, then, I'm going to be in that conversation as well, and, all this sort of stuff. And then there's been talk of a short list that Williams are drawing up to, replace potentially both drivers, Latifi and, George. Latifi's okay. He's solid. He brings a bit of money, but is he, is he somebody that you want to, you're going to build a team around? I don't think he's that. And there's a couple of names out there. Even the Formula E race, the London E Prix last weekend, Toto was talking about Nick de Vries and Stoffel van Dorn, the two Mercedes Formula E drivers, and he was saying that, those guys deserve another shot at Formula One, and, potentially Williams could be an opportunity for them. Danny Kvyat's name has been mentioned. Nico Hülkenberg's name has been mentioned. I think they should be looking at an experienced driver, especially with the change of regulations that are going into 2022. I don't think they could go in there with two rookies and expect to, have a good understanding of the car and being helped to develop a brand new car with brand new, aero and mechanical package. So I think you're going to have to go, a Hulkenberg would be a prime target, I think, in many ways. And even Kvyat, with his experiences at Red Bull and Ferrari, would be a good option. And I think he's at Alpine right now as well. So, there's a few options there. So, yeah, it's looking... a couple of months ago, I thought it was like 50-50. But I think... I would say it's 75-25 that George will be going to Mercedes next year.
This poses a no question. Do you think 2022 we're still going to see the F2 champion go to F1, or you feel like with the new car, there's a decent chance we may not have a rookie of any kind? Because there's no room for it, because the only one that could be valuable is maybe De Vries, and he's so far the only F2 champion in this current incarnation to have not make it to Formula One.
Yeah, I mean, he was sort of a victim of the timing of when seats became available, wasn't he? I mean, if you look on the grid at the moment, who's potentially vulnerable? I think Kimi could retire, and there's a lot of talk that Bottas would be his replacement at Alfa Romeo, which makes sense. Giovinazzi has done okay. Has he done anything more than okay? He's improved. I certainly thought he would be a little bit more vulnerable than maybe he has been. He hasn't dug up any trees, that's for sure.
The one thing he had last year was making moves on the open lap, which I don't think it's been a complete afterthought this season. That was the one element that people remember. Yeah, and do you make a career out of that? Probably not. So he was there. Obviously, I think Latifi's at danger. By sounds of things, Haas have got their two guys tied up for another year anyway. I think those are the only two experienced drivers that could be, or I think there could only be 2 or 3 seats that have become available. So, if somebody like a Hulkenberg picks up one of those seats, then, which rookies would you be looking at? De Vries is a possibility. If you're looking at, Alfa Romeo don't have any contractual obligation to put a Ferrari-backed driver in their car now under the new agreement. So if you're looking at somebody like Robert Schwartzman, who's been pretty competitive in Formula 2 for the last few years, or even Callum Ilott, who's had a couple of outings in the Alfa Romeo this year in free practice, there's a few names that are sort of in the mix, but there's nobody there that sort of stands out and shouts at you and goes, yeah, this guy's got to get in Formula One, like you maybe had with Lando Norris and George Russell a few years ago. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and where these opportunities do become available. But with the new regulations, I think that weighs heavily more on the more experienced side, to give somebody with that continuity and help develop the car. Yeah, especially if I recall, is it the Renault development driver Zoe still the championship leader?
Sorry?
The championship leader, if I recall, I think it's the Renault Academy driver.
Oh, the Chinese guy. Is he? I know he's driven a couple of free practice Zhang Gu. I can't pronounce his name. Sorry, I can't remember who it is. But yeah, I think it's the Chinese kid in there who's been very impressive this year. And I know he's done a couple of outings for Alpine in the, I know he did one in Austria, and maybe he did 2 in Austria, actually, free practice sessions, and was pretty impressive. So, there's another name that potentially is in the mix. And obviously there is the, marketing perspective of, a guy like that in the sport, from a commercial standpoint, he would sell out the Chinese Grand Prix by himself, which is obviously great for F1 from their commercial side. So, it'll be interesting to see. I know there was talk of Alpine was sniffing around Williams to try and make Williams like a junior team and a feeder team, but I don't think that'll get much traction.
No, that would be weird that a once elite team is now viewed as a junior.
Exactly.
That just sounds wrong.
Yeah, and they are to a certain extent with Mercedes almost, with George being in there and the packages that they've had and the way they've had that link with Toto. But
it's true. but from a
Yeah,
it just
Yeah,
feels weird thinking
for
about
sure.
that.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that was just somebody sounding it out in the media to see if there was any, the fish were going to bite sort of thing. But I think things are going to be relatively stable in the driver market going into next year. There may be a couple of changes, a couple of moves, but as I said, the big one I can see is Russell going to Mercedes, Bottas probably going to Alfa Romeo, Kimi probably retiring, and then who do Williams pick up?
Kimi's been retiring almost as long as I've been watching Formula One racing.
It's very true. He's great, isn't he? He's the first person to compete in the same Grand Prix 20 times. Pretty impressive.
My word, yeah, that is pretty impressive. Yeah, it's a lot of guys don't have.
Mind you, there was two
long,
British
yeah.
Grand Prix last year, so
Yeah.
but he would have still
yeah.
achieved that if he hadn't taken his 2-year sabbatical. He would have actually been better than that. So you could argue that he could have done 21 British Grand Prix or 22, in fact. So yeah, the guys, and he's not slowing down. That's the crazy thing. The guy's as fast as he ever has been.
Yeah, he's
In
still
many ways.
Yeah, while the car's nowhere near podium material, he's in the cusp. He's been in the cusp of getting a point or two every Grand Prix as of late.
No, he's been doing his thing for sure. So we'll see. I mean, obviously there is still the question mark of Perez at Red Bull. He had a couple of good results, and he got that win in Azerbaijan, which is, but outside of that, what's he really done?
Aside from the French after the French Grand Prix disaster at Silverstone, I still look back at Imola too. That was not a good weekend for him. The ones where he'd been real bad, This was Imola and Silverstone.
Yeah.
Personally, I feel there's enough races left on the calendar for Perez to redeem himself.
No, for sure.
A race win, even early in the season, goes a long way towards contract negotiations.
It does, but did he win it because he was the fastest? He didn't win that because he was the fastest guy out there. He won. He
was the last man standing.
Guys.
Yeah. He was going to be on the podium either way, but as far as a win is concerned, it just came at the palm of his hand after Hamilton botched it. Because he didn't get the greatest starting point.
No,
people forget.
No. Yeah, I still worry about that. I still think there's some insert. Red Bull are not 100% convinced by him still. I think if they were, they would have signed him up already for another year.
And me personally, I wouldn't mind seeing Gasly back in that car.
No, and I know there have been talks and they've been talking about that, and there've been, there was those discussions supposedly during one of the Austrian weekend races, or between those Austrian races, where Gasly and Helmut Marko sat down and discussed, their long-term future. But Gasly's certainly a driver that stands out and makes you want to look at, the potential that he deserves to be in a bigger team than a Red Bull feeder team. He went there, he had troubles, he was caught up in the whole sort of Max hysteria sort of thing, and he paid the price for it to a certain extent.
I think if he gets another shot, he'll be better off now.
I think so. Yeah. Well, he's, no substitute for a couple more years under your belt. You know what I mean? So, you know what to do, what not to do next time. Right. So,
yeah.
All right, let's since we're speaking of driver movement stuff, let's turn our attention to the IndyCar series, where obviously just like every week, the day after we recorded the show, major announcement, seemingly out of left field, that Jack Harvey has opted to leave the Michael Shank team, which sewed up Elio Castroneves as a full-time ride there, which I believe was planned anyway, but they went ahead and announced that. But now they're looking for a full-time driver for Harvey's seat, the 60 car. And Harvey, obviously, it's quite obviously reading between the lines of his little memo that he typed up where he was very gracious and very classy and crediting the team and very appreciative. But he did mention, working with AutoNation going forward in the future. So obviously the sponsorship is going to be with him in some way. And he also, right before he mentioned AutoNation, he mentioned Honda. So it's kind of unclear if the relationship with Honda is also expected to go in the future. But anyway, most of your pundits are putting him either at Rahal Letterman Racing, or some folks are still saying there's a strong possibility he goes to Andretti, which Andretti is expected to have a pretty big driver shakeup that'll leave both James Hinchcliffe and Ryan Hunter-Reay looking for work. Now, the interesting thing about the Rahal thing is that it was just a few weeks ago that Bobby Rahal said they were working on getting everything together to get Takuma signed for another year. Now Takuma seems to always operate on these 1-year contracts. Why that is, I'm not sure, but if for the last couple of years, it's always kind of been the same story. Bobby Rahal said, well, we're trying to get everything together, get the I's dotted and T's crossed to make sure we retain Takuma. And Rahal said this recently, but the story is kind of coming out that Takuma is perhaps going to a part-time schedule. So now, Louise, what are some of the things you're hearing around this?
I've heard that Meyer Shank is probably looking at an IndyCar driver. The quote will be a surprise, kind of out of left field. It makes me wonder maybe Grosjean, because initially when I heard the out of left field comments, thinking a Formula One driver or somebody from IMSA, or I don't know, like an F2, like
Alex Albon's name has been coming.
Oh, yeah, that's the one that I was thinking
his name has been coming up more and more in the IndyCar paddock, yeah.
Which probably be a good, might not be a bad idea. We'll see how he does, and he's doing not too bad in DTM from what I've seen, but it's still very young.
Solid,
that season,
but yeah,
still a very young season over there overseas, but it's more leaning towards an IndyCar driver for Meyer Shank in that main ride, because if Harvey left, it's leaving a team that he kind of built upon from almost from the ground up, essentially as a competitor. It must be a good deal for him that will get him further, that will make him more of a race caliber driver rather than just be the qualifying guy, which has been the theme of his career so far.
Yeah, qualified very well and then failed to deliver on Sunday. Sometimes his fault, sometimes the fault of his pit crew. So
sometimes the car.
Sometimes the car. Yeah, it's been about equal woeful news on Sundays for Jack.
Yeah, there's
so a fresh start is probably good for him. Go ahead, Luis.
Yeah, there's also like stuff going around. Asada will be on the move somewhere else. There's also, let's not forget, Santino Ferrucci, who wants that car. He hopes he gets that car, the 45 or even the 30 if it becomes open. Because I do see Rahal maybe going 3 cars full time. I think that's the plan, especially with that new shop that you're building, or about done if it hasn't been done already.
Yeah, it's certainly the plan to go 3 cars full time, but it's always been the funding holding them back. It's always been the funding to fund that 3rd car. Now, luckily, they've been pretty lucky this year with Hy-Vee signing on to do all those races with Santino. But Hy-Vee, obviously, they are a localized grocery store chain, so they'll have no interest in sponsoring any West Coast races or any races down in Florida. But as far as those Road America, Indianapolis, Mid Ohio, they've been more than happy to sign on, and they've actually done quite a good job of activation. If you go in a Hy-Vee store in the Indianapolis area, you'll see giant cardboard cutouts of Santino Ferrucci and giant blow up race car hanging over the Mountain Dew display. So they are really have been a pretty good partner there. But they would need to find somebody to fill the gap. That's why I'm wondering if, when we're talking about Sato going to a part-time schedule, if that's the plan there, is that Sato and Ferrucci would share the 45 car and the remaining, and then Harvey would take over the 30 on a full schedule with AutoNation.
It'd be curious to see how that unfolds. And also, as far as the F2 driver, Christian Lundgaard had a test. There's supposedly a potential plan that he might run some IndyCar races. Maybe it may just be him testing to see how it goes. I mean, for all we know, Tatiana Calderon could make an IndyCar start later this season for Ford, but that's just a test. You
Certainly, yeah. Well, she's got a little money.
Yeah, she does. Albeit she was,
but she actually wasn't horrible in the test.
No, she was good. It's just when she was in Formula 2, when you have a teammate like Anton Hubert and you're competing with Mahavir Raghunathan on a race by race basis, it's you look at it on the surface like, you sure you want to make the jump? Maybe she'll deliver IndyCar, but it really depends on the results quality.
Now, Louise, I want to commend you on pronouncing those names. That was wonderful.
I mean, it's not hard to pronounce Mahavir Raghunathan, to be honest, if you hear the name and the memes is long enough.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's besides the point. But yeah, there's a lot of drivers that could be running. I know there's always the talk about Colin Brown maybe signing every other year, it seems, like Colin Brown. There's that other guy from INSA that's slipping through my mind, the Taylor brothers. But there's another one.
Felipe Nasser name always comes up.
Always does.
Yeah. So, but let's talk a little bit about Andretti, where we expect to shake him. Okay. The hot rumor is that replacing Ryan Hunter-Way will be Grosjean, and which would be a good step up for Grosjean, moving from Coin to Andretti. It'd be a good move for Andretti because we've seen the positive effect that Grosjean has had at the Coin team, and it's quite obvious that Andretti at the moment could use a little more positive effect than they have. So I think that would be a good move for both parties if that comes to fruition. The other one is that Sato, rather than doing a part-time schedule, ends up back at Andretti. That's been mentioned a bit too, but I think it's pretty much decided that Hunter-Reay and James Hinchcliffe are both out the door there. Hunter-Reay may show up in the Coin car. He may be replacing Ed Jones or Grosjean. So it's
I've heard an IMSA driver in the mix, or Oliver Askew is another one that's in the market.
Askew's name has come up a lot. Yes.
The Costa from Formula E, a number of times I've heard that.
Kyle Kirkwood moving up in Andretti has been mentioned as well. Kyle Kirkwood has also been mentioned in conjunction with the ride at Michael Shank Racing, where if you think about it, you put Kirkwood in there with Elio Castro Neves as a teammate. So you've got the rookie and the mentor right there. And that's a pretty good match.
That could be a good match. That could be considered a bit out of left field. The question is, first off, does he need to win the Indy Lights Champion to be for Michael and those guys to be convinced? I thought about Michael Shank in this case, or they want to see him win the championship. The guys like Linus Lundqvist for it first, because we've seen before, like Colton Herta and Pato O'Ward jump in as rookies in 19, but Pato's first full year was the year after because of all the circumstances we talked about in the past. So we could still see that. I'd be curious to see how many cars will show up in Long Beach. I feel like this has the cusp of having about 28 cars. If we're fingers crossed, we could see maybe some Indy Light drivers make their debut. Maybe they want to give Lundgaard an opportunity, as long as it doesn't clash with Formula 2, which I don't know about that. But I feel like we could see the finale have the strongest field in probably, as far as number of cars on the road course, in about 10 years.
Yeah.
Because we've seen 26. We haven't seen 28.
I think we're going to have 27 at the Brickyard weekend coming up here in a couple of weeks. Because we've got the addition of the Top Gun racing team there.
Mm-hmm.
So
also,
they've got
still haven't heard if they want Sage Karam to do the double, because Sage Karam's going to run the Xfinity race, but I don't think they're going to Dry Rumble is going to put him in the 24. Or I still stand by this kind of semi humor that 98 car, they may put him in there, but that's just because he drove an Iris in that 98 car instead of Marco. But you never know.
You never know. Yeah, I don't think that Sage's relationship with Andretti is that strong where you'll see him in the car.
No, it's just
yeah,
Marco and Sage are close buddies, if anything else.
This is true. This is true. They did kind of grow up in the same hometown, and kind of came up close enough to one another. Marco was a little older, but I think Dreyer Reinbold keeps hinting that they want to do more than just the Indy 500, right? But they've been hinting this for 4 years now. And we've seen no evidence of them entering any other races other than the 500. So to me, it would surprise me to see Dry Reinbold enter a car at Long Beach at the end of the year when they literally haven't put a car on a road course in the better part of a decade.
No, I don't have him in my bingo card being a Long Beach entry. I feel like we'll see if we could see extra entries or maybe an additional one-off entry. I think it has the good. I have that feeling that we could see that, but we'll see what happens between now and September, especially with Laguna. If I recall, that's the championship race for Indy Lights.
Right. Now, the other big moving piece of the silly season picture is a certain Mr. Simon Pagenaud, whose contract has not been signed for next year yet. Penske has made it known that they do intend to continue with 4 cars, although Simon is technically right now a free agent. Obviously, he would like to sign with Penske, but if that doesn't come to fruition, question number 1 is who ends up in the Penske car, and some of that smart money there is on Rinus VeeKay, who Penske seems to think a lot of, and then where does Pagenaud go? There is a strong possibility that if he's released at Penske, he ends up being Elio's teammate once again. And
that's another out of left field rubber I could possibly see.
Yeah, but that would be a relatively strong team for Shank there, who's been having decent, been doing decent with Jack Harvey, but you bring those 2 ringers in there. They can only serve to help elevate the team. I mean, Elio jumped in the car for 1 race, and what did he do? Won it. So,
it's real unfair. Yeah, right out of the gate, he was able to get a win out of it under his belt. But the question is, would Ed Carpenter want him to have a similar fate like what he had with Newgarden, struggle for a number of years until they find their next gold?
Yeah.
That's got to be in the back of Ed's mind.
Well, I mean, Ed needs to make it attractive for VeeKay to stay. Obviously it's hard to, especially, at VeeKay's point in his career where he's rather young. If a Penske ride is presented to you, that's a hard thing to turn down. Right.
Yeah.
And if it's, if you say, oh, not now, I want to hang out with Ed, it may never be presented to you again. Right. And while Carpenter's team is good and capable of winning races here and there, they've never really contended for a championship.
No, they have not. And nobody has really, outside of Penske and Ganassi and Andretti, nobody has been in the mix since Panther, really. When you really think about it, last time we saw a team that is not Penske, Andretti, or Ganassi win was Panther Racing, and that was nearly 2 decades ago. And the only one that's been knocking on that door has been Arrow McLaren, and Ed Carpenter is there with VeeKay, but the injury, the 1 race he missed, hurt him a bit, but it's certainly not helped and not what they wanted to have happen.
Certainly, yeah, but we'll have to see how that plays out. I feel like Pagenaud will get another year with Penske. That's my personal feeling, but it doesn't count for anything really since I don't work for Penske. I don't sign any checks for them. So, but
neither do I, nor I get details from them.
But circling back to we were talking about earlier, the addition of Albon to the series is interesting. Richard, don't you think?
It would be. It's a rumor I haven't heard, but I think the guy needs a break from the Red Bull family. I think he's sort of shell shocked still a little bit, and I just don't think it sort of. I think he needs a clean break to regain that confidence and that obvious skill that the guy has as a driver. You know, that he has some ability there, and he did show it at times at Red Bull, but not convincing enough over a long enough time period. So if you can go there, I think it could be a really good opportunity for him to sort of reset his career in a slightly less pressure intense environment, which was I think that was the real issue with him at Red Bull. Wasn't necessarily the speed per se, but how he handled the pressure. And it's a similar situation with Gasly when he was there, although Gasly may have turned that around a little bit. So you'd like to see him do well in DTM first and then see what happened. But, certainly the guy, has ability. It'd be good to see him back in a single-seater series again.
Yeah, it seems like the only team that's kind of really out of the silly season picture is Chip Ganassi, who seemed to be chugging right along with their 4 drivers. As a matter of fact, Jimmy Johnson is talking more and more about adding the ovals to his schedule next year.
And there's also now, as of today, maybe Trackhouse wants to be involved in the 500. Could Ganassi enter an extra entry for them? Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe. But yeah,
that's the only thing. That's the only 2022 thing I could correlate with Ganassi. But other than that, it seems like they're lock and loaded with what they have.
Yep, they say Ericsson is not quite signed for next year yet, but they are very happy with him. And I mean,
it's just a dark horse contender for the championship.
Yeah, it's just a matter of getting the proper paper signed and whatnot. But I think Dixon is still under contract. Palou is still under contract. So and they're really going to work hard to get retain Ericsson. And so Jimmy Johnson is supposed to test at Homestead, test the IndyCar and Oval coming up here in the fall. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. But he's, some of his comments were rather candid when he was, and he hasn't said anything that we hadn't heard before out of him, that he said he was, concerned about the level of safety, when it comes to, having a wife and kids to think about. And, but he said one of the things that kind of got him feeling more comfortable was, number one, driving the cars, and number two was seeing Palou have that shunt in practice at the 500, and it was a pretty hard hit, but Palou was unscathed, and I think that boosted Jimmy's level of confidence in the safety of the cars. So he's going to begin by testing the car at Homestead, and with his sights set on running the Indy 500 next year.
Yeah, I think it'll be great to see Johnson and Grosjean compete in that 500 for the first time, because I think the Indy 500 is, the race itself is the draw, but as far as bringing eyeballs and maybe as far as viewership is concerned, I think it'll do many wonders globally. It's just a matter of how they handle the global TV rights package. And that reminds me, NBC will still be around for IndyCar next season. Just 2 of them will be Peacock exclusive, and more national NBC races. I mean, big boy network races, is like to call it.
Yeah. I think they have 13 races are going to be on NBC, or NBC or USA, right?
Yeah, the USA would be the new network.
And when you consider USA is on the basic tier of most cable packages. It's in a whole lot more households than NBCSN is, right? So you're talking, there's only 2 races that are on the streaming thing, which Peacock has 42 million subscribers right now. At different levels. Some of them have the free package, other ones have the the $5 a month, and there's the $10 a month with no ad package you can get. But either way, those races are going to be available to a much wider audience than they ever have been. And yet, IndyCar fans still bitch about the TV package.
It's more or less more or less the Peacock exclusive, if anything, I'd imagine. The 2 races are going to be exclusively on the streaming service.
Yeah, some people are bitching about, or they're bitching the fact that the while the races are on NBC, they're going to be compressed. There'll be no pre-race show. They'll probably get preempted for golf or lacrosse. Any kind of comment that you can make, because race fans like to bitch.
No.
So it's just like nothing is, and you're not going to have every single practice and qualifying on free over the air TV. And then who the hell doesn't have some form of pay television this day and age, unless you're living in a very scarcely populated region, the access to internet is pretty widespread. So, I know there are a few places here and there, but overall, I think it's a very good package. And Peacock for $5 a month, right? Even if you just watch those 2 races and all the practice and qualifying sessions, that's worth my money, right? But Peacock also has tons of other programming. They've got TV shows and movies, and they've got original series, and they've got comedies and dramas and documentaries. It's a whole slate of programming that you're getting. If you're going to, I got to pay $5 a month to watch a practice. But you're not getting just an apple. You're getting a whole bag full of groceries.
Yep. That is a great package.
Yep. So there you go. That's just my thoughts on the TV package. I'm quite pleased with it. So, anything else IndyCar wise that we missed?
Let's see. Grosjean and a number of drivers tested at Gateway. Grosjean is going to run Gateway. Is now pretty much 100% confirmed, if it hasn't been enough already, that he'll be racing in that one.
And Grosjean's comment was, anybody who thinks IndyCar oval racing is easy is dead wrong.
Yep.
This is what he said after he drove the car. So
let's see what but yeah, I think
we'll know more in
Nashville.
Yeah. Top Gun tested down Sebring. Get ready for their debut on the road course in Indianapolis in a few weeks. You said we had who's the guy that tested with Real, Formula 2 guy?
Christian Lundgaard.
Yeah.
And Oliver Askew also tested at Barber. There's a couple that tested at Barber as well. So there are a lot of testing go around since IndyCar has had their last race back at Mid-Ohio.
Yeah. I had a couple of weeks off from us. We'll get all the testing in you can. And this is the time of year during that break where you try out the rookies too, or try out some Indy Lights guys. So
yeah, which more than likely, if that were to happen, they'll probably send them to Portland like we've seen in the past as well. But we'll see when that will take place and how many more testing will take place for the younger competitors.
Right. And then, of course, over the next several weeks, we'll have more news surrounding where everybody's going to end up in 2022.
The Meyer Shake is probably going to come right around West Coast swing time. That's the other thing. From what I've heard, is probably around Portland. Fingers crossed I'll be there for all 3 days. We'll see. That's just personal note, but that's as far as I know that I've heard as of late on the IndyCar side.
Well, I'm kind of curious to see who they announced, because the whole Harvey thing kind of took them by surprise from what I gather from what I've been hearing. They kind of were ready to sign Harvey to 2 more years. And then at the last minute said Harvey says, I think I got something else lined up. So, all right. So we got about 10 minutes left. So let's talk about the stock cars a little bit. You had wanted to talk some more about Brad Keselowski and his new role with Roush Racing. So Louise.
Yeah. So that's been official. Christian Lundgaard. Chris Buescher is going to still be with the 17 team. That leaves Ryan Newman with the option of either going part-time or go elsewhere. I know in the past, I think as of recent, Newman still wants to compete. He still feels like he could be a championship caliber driver. With a car like Roush that's been improving, they still got a long ways to go. Keselowski's also been open as far as maybe opening his truck or Xfinity, more likely trucks again. That could still be in the works. You never say never, because I know when you look at after 2017, when they left the truck series, it left a huge gap for Ford. And with now Keselowski life after Penske, and with Cindric taking over that Duke, or it makes me wonder as well, where did that Penske Xfinity program go? Because Ford, they only have the 98 Stuart Haas with Riley Herbst. He has to set the world on fire. He's going to need a win to make the playoffs. And as far as points his way in, forget about it. It's the only way he may points his way in is if Annette misses more races, but we'll see about that. And his other competitors just struggle. Ford is kind of hemorrhaging on the lower level. They've been for a while. Even when they had Cindric and Briscoe winning all those Xfinity races, they've just been hurting.
Yeah. So Cindric's been, excuse me, Cindric's been one of their great shining lights in their Xfinity program, as along with Briscoe. But yeah, I'd be interested to see who picks up the 22 Xfinity, and maybe somebody that we haven't even heard of yet. Now, Richard, real quick, while we're still on the topic, now when it comes to Ryan Newman. Now, Ryan reasonably well. You and he work together.
Yeah.
Do you feel like he still has a lot to give to a team? Do you feel like there's going to be a decent landing spot for him? Because a lot of folks kind of feel like he's on the tail end of his career. He's been around a while. He's had a good run.
He has. He's certainly had that run, and he's certainly had a great career, and he's done very, very well out of it. You got to ask, where would the motivation to continue come from? Is he going to win a championship? No, because those big seats are locked up, and they're certainly not going to go for a driver of his maturity, should we say. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but I certainly don't think he'd do a part-time gig. I just don't. I can't see the motivation for that. With everything that happened at Daytona last year, I think personally he's just going to say, right, you know what, guys, we're good. See you later.
Yeah, I mean, he could walk away from the sport with nothing to be ashamed of. Like you said, he's had a great career. He's got a young family. He's got money in the bank.
Yeah.
He can just enjoy the rest of his life. Go back to the farm like some of these guys do.
Yep.
Maybe
he runs this.
He
runs this thing. Yeah, he runs this thing called the Rescue Ranch. For animals and the like. So he's certainly got a lot of interests outside of the sport. So it'll be interesting to see what he does.
Sure will. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes left, Luis. So we were talking some more about some of the moves in Xfinity and some of the other moves in NASCAR. I think there's not a lot of the other big seats really in play. I think we're going to see a lot of folks returning.
You still have the whole thing with Trackhouse and 2311 as far as their expansion program is concerned. As far as recently, you look at Xfinity, Tommy Joe Martin's going to go part-time next season. He's not running the full schedule. Instead, he's going to have other drivers in that 44 Xfinity car, which probably it may help them. Now, Tommy has had some flashes of brilliance, but when he has those flashes of brilliance, something tend to happen that it takes it away from him. But we'll see how that 44 program is. I still feel like Ty is going to be a full-time Xfinity next year. Question is...
Ty Gibbs, that is?
Yeah, Ty Gibbs. The question is...
Yeah, it would make no sense to hold him back.
Yeah, the question is...
pretty good.
What car he'll drive? Will he be in the 18? Will he take over Harrison Burton's 20 car? Be curious to see which car he'll end up. It's not what team he'll go or what he'll do. The writing on the wall is Gibbs going to run Xfinity full time. That's my. Nobody would be surprised with that. It's just a matter of what car, what race team he's going to, what team number he's going to drive for. And let's see, we got Truck Series is you never know what the truck series, because there's really, you could see very few stay where they at, or a massive shake around, which would not surprise me at the slides if we see a massive shake around in the truck series in 22. Xfinity is almost looking like we're going to see the same faces. The big thing is Josh Berry. What will he be? What will be the future for him? Will he have enough funding, or will Dale Jr. put him in a full-time ride? Or there's so many. Xfinity is pretty much, there's a lot of unknowns in a way. Truck series,
as
you
it should,
don't know.
as it should be. You know what I mean? The feeder series should be relatively fluid. You know, with guys moving up and guys moving out.
Yeah,
You shouldn't have guys spend their whole career in Xfinity. Although some do their whole career. Yeah. But so then there's a question of Matt DiBenedetto. Is this poor guy just going to be rideless or part-time in somewhere? You know,
he's going to have to accept the fact that if it's a competitive Xfinity or truck team, take it.
Yeah.
Take it. Look, at this race, like, yeah, you want to be a cut driver, but you want to go back to where you were back in the mid-20 teens and be subpar with some good runs, expecting that maybe a top-level team will pick you up. I think the writing on the wall is there. He had his shot. That's the Wood brothers, and he's going to need a win to point his way in. There's no question about it.
Yeah, he certainly failed to capitalize on the opportunity with the Wood
he was gonna be gone after 22 anyway. He was gonna be out the door at 22 regardless. Whether it was, at the time it was gonna be Centric at that 21 car before the whole Keselowski thing picked up and they put him in the 2 and Harrison in the 21.
Yeah, I think that there was a glimmer of hope for some folks when Keselowski started talking about Roush that was going to save the day for Matt DiBenedetto, and in some ways, some folks feel like Harrison Burton isn't quite ready for a Cup ride yet. But we shall see.
He earns the ride, but this season he's still yet to win. He's having a bit of a sophomore slump in a way that he hasn't racked up the wins like he did a year ago. That's the thing. He's gonna hit back to victory lane, but it's gonna be a learning curve for Harrison. But I think him with the Wood brothers may be a good way to polish his craft, and maybe he'll surprise us. We'll see. But at this moment, going back to Benedetto, he's gonna have to just accept the fact that if there's a top level, a good Xfinity car that he can win, like with Hambrick at Gibbs, take it. Or John Hunter Nemechek at KBM, take it.
Yeah, because there may be a whole lot, very few and far between offers coming his way.
Yeah, the question is, if he goes down and succeeds, can he move back to Cup? It's very rare. Very few that started in Cup, went back to the lower levels, came back to Cup. And that is Mark Martin, and to a minor extent, Mike Skinner. But there was just, the thing about Mike Skinner between the years 1986 to 1994, he drove very sporadically in Winston Cup. Then the Truck Series opened up, he exploded in the Truck Series, and then he went back to Cup in 97 through 03, and then went down to Trucks and came back to Cup only as a starting park driver. It's very difficult when you go down to go back up. Mark Martin has been the only one that's been successful at it.
Yes, and Mark Martin's certainly in a class of his own. When you're comparing him to, say, a Matt DiBenedetto.
No, for sure. Mark Martin's a whole different zone, but he's the only one that genuinely went back down. When he went back up, he stayed there.
Absolutely. So now we've got just a moment left. But I do want to say that Formula One is racing in Hungary this weekend. We will have at least one major race this weekend while the Olympics are still going on. So let's go around the table and pick us our winner for Hungary. We're going in with a little bad blood between Red Bull and Mercedes, so it could be an interesting race.
I'm gonna go with Hamilton.
All righty, and Richard.
Verstappen.
Okay, so you took all the good ones. That leaves me I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Valtteri wins this one because he sometimes tends to pull one out of thin air when the contract talks are happening. So give him a little bargaining power there, even though he may very well be on his way out the door. But at least it'll rise his stock for next year. Anyway, we are out of time, so I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank you, Richard and Louise. I want to thank iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and Google Podcasts and YouTube. And I want to thank you folks that listen to us. Until next week, good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.